Hello, this is Ron Climer. I am with Keller Williams Realty in Ormond Beach, Florida, Daytona Beach, Florida, in Volusia County. And I want to tell you about a process that happens when someone doesn't make their mortgage payments. If someone quits making their mortgage payments in Florida, if they go about 4, 5, 6 months without making those payments, the bank will start a process called foreclosure. And that's where the bank hires an attorney, and guess who pays for that attorney? The person that's not making their payments. So the bank hires an attorney to foreclose on the property. Now what that means is the bank says, we want to be paid. And so they demand that the court sell the property at public auction and give them the proceeds of that auction. Now the process from the time it's filed with the court until the time it's finished in Florida is about 5, 6, 8 months, somewhere in that vicinity, depending on a bunch of factors. Too many factors to put in a short video. But they requested it be sold. It goes through this process and then it becomes sold. It's set for sale, which is usually about a month away. So the guy that's not making his payments, he knows his house is going to be sold in 30 days. And when it's sold, now this, and by the way, in the old days, this auction was literally done on the courthouse steps, live and in person. Today, it's done online. But here's the rules at this auction. Number one, you have to pay cash. And I mean cash. You don't have time to arrange a loan or apply for FHA or anything like that. You bid today and you got to have the money in the registry of the court usually within a day or two, depending on what county it is. And so it's cash. You got to have the money to even bid. A second rule, you've never inspected the property. You've never done a septic tank inspection or a roof inspection or any of that kind of stuff, because the guy that's in possession of the property has no reason to allow you on the premises to do that. You've never been inside the property. So anybody that's bidding on a house like that, they're looking for a bargain. But the biggest problem is when you buy a house at a foreclosure auction, you never know for sure that you've got a clear title. You know, when Joe Smith sells his house to John Jones the buyer gets what's known as title insurance, which is a guarantee that if there's any title problems, the title insurance company will solve them. You don't get that at a foreclosure auction. You can very easily buy a house at a foreclosure auction and find out that maybe the house is worth $300,000, it's got $1 million worth of liens that are still there after you bought it, which means whatever you paid for it is probably going to be lost. Now, if you stop and think about it, how many people are in a financial condition, A, they can pay cash, B, they're not going to fall over dead if they lose that money. And the truth is there's not many people bidding on those, and so they're a bargain. They're a super bargain, and they should be, because the person that's buying them is accepting a lot of risk. But let me give you an example. Let's say a house is worth $300,000. If you did a competitive market analysis or had it appraised, it would appraise for right at $300,000. And let's say our hero owes $210,457.50 on his mortgage. Well, that's quite a bit of equity, almost $90,000. So he quits making his payments. The bank forecloses and said, we want the property sold. Well, what happens is the property is sold at public auction under the conditions I just described to you. Well, who's one of the bidders at the bank, at the auction? And the answer is the bank. The bank comes to the auction and they'll bid up to, guess what? $210,457.50, because that's what they're owed. So that's what they're owed, and once they get there, they'll shut up. Now, let's say there's a rich guy in the audience. He wants to bid $1 more, and so he does. He'll end up buying the property. But let's say there's not. Nobody wants to pay more than $210,457.50 for it. Then the bank ends up buying that property. And that's what we in real estate call REOs, real estate owned. And the bank now owns that property. They list it with a realtor, sell it for $300,000 or $295,000 or somewhere in that vicinity, and basically pay a commission, pay whatever fees they have to, and recoup their money, and sometimes make a little money. Now, in reality, when you go to one of these auctions, which today is most people are online, when you go to the auction, everybody in the audience, everybody that's there, knows how much the bank's going to bid. $210,457.57. So what happens, the bank opens the bidding at $100. And chances are, nobody else will even bid. So the bank buys the property for $100. Now, when they do that, that gives them the right to come back and sue the debtor, the guy that's having financial problems and not making his payments. They can come back and sue the debtor for what's known as a deficiency judgment. And they get a judgment against him that gives them the ability to take his lotto winnings, take his money out of the bank, garnish his wages, whatever they have to do to collect that money. And that's a problem. So, however, with that thought in mind, and I've been doing this a long, long time. I've been chasing down foreclosures a long time. And here's what I find. Most people, when I say most, probably about 50% or more, when they're served a summons by the sheriff that says, your house is being foreclosed on, they don't do anything. They don't call anybody and ask for any advice. They don't call me, a realtor, and say, can we sell this thing and put some money in my pocket? They don't call an attorney and say, is there some way we can drag this process out or whatever? I don't know why. Now, a couple of things you can do and you should do is call an attorney. But if you don't want to do that, just call me and let's sell the property. Because if somebody's living in a house that is worth $300,000, they call me and said, Ron, can you get this house sold in 6 months or less? The answer's pretty much for sure. But I can't do it if I start the day, 2 days before the auction. By the way, a lot of times I contact people early up front when they first foreclosed on, and they call me back 6 months later. I say, Ron, my house is being sold at public auction day after tomorrow. Is there anything you can do to help me? Well, most of the time at that point in the story, there's not. But if they call me early when they first serve the summons and they first become aware that it's for sale, most of the time I can sell the property and put some money in their pocket. I've had people, and by the way, a thing that's happening today that's a new phenomenon for me is reverse mortgages. You know, a lot of times Grandpa had his house, and about 10 years ago he called you up and said, hey, what do you know about these reverse mortgages? And you said, oh, I don't know anything about those. Well, he ended up getting one. Well, the way that works is the bank sends him some money every month, and the balance on his mortgage goes up every month. Well, one day he dies. And when he dies, the heirs say, oh, well, he's got a mortgage. We're just going to abandon this house. Well, a lot of times the house is worth $250,000 and Grandpa owes $50,000 on it, because that's how much money the bank has sent him over the last 10 years. Well, obviously, if the heirs had called me and said, Ron, can you help us? My answer would be, sure, I can sell the house for $250,000, pay my commission at 6%, and keep the rest, except for the $50,000 that you have to pay the bank. But a lot of people seem to not even pursue it. They think, well, it's a mortgage. We're not even going to check it out and see how much it is and what the story is. And don't do that, folks. If your house is being foreclosed on, call me and let me help you. It's the easiest thing in the world for you, because once you call me and say, Ron, sell my house, the next thing you got to do is show up to closing and collect a check. Now, it doesn't always happen that way. I don't know what the individual circumstances are, but there's many circumstances, especially, I'm making this video in 2021. This is the hottest real estate market I have ever seen, and I have been doing this since the 70s. I mean, it is just a hot market. that house that you bought 3 years ago for $200,000 is worth $400,000 today. I mean, that's what's happening in Daytona, Ormond Beach. I don't know if that's happening where you are. But if you're being foreclosed on, or have a friend that's being foreclosed on, have them call me. Let me see if I can help them. My phone number is 828-755-6996. I'm in Volusia County, Florida. Thank you very much.